We're going to cover the Computational Brain Science Group Server today, otherwise known as the CBS Server. And we're just going to start with some sort of introductory slides to give you a sense, if you're brand new to the server, of what the server is, what it isn't, how you get going with it, and things like that. And then afterwards, we'll go through some basic, how do you log in? How do you change your password? How do you access software sorts of things? So for those of you who are new, the CBS server is a locally managed multi-core computational server. So the server itself is located in a closet in Robarts somewhere, and it is managed by Robarts IT. So those sorts of things are local. It's designed primarily to replace high-end desktops. And it provides labs the ability to have central storage for research data that everyone within a lab can access. So you don't need to pass around the hard drives anymore. We have a central repository of research software that we as the server admin maintain. So again, if you're all analyzing the same data in the lab, you can all make sure that you're using the same versions of MATLAB and FSL and FreeSurfer and things like that. We do allow for custom security access to research data. So if you're a PI and you have a specific project that only certain people in your lab should have access to, we can set up security access lists for that. And the server has automatic local and offsite backups. So the offsite backups are done in the same place as Compute Canada's in Waterloo. So what the CBS server isn't, it is not meant to be a replacement for high performance compute systems like Compute Canada. So if you're looking to try and parallel process, 100 data sets through, you may be better off looking at your options with Compute Canada rather than the CBS server. And the CBS server, even though your PI has purchased storage, it's not meant to be a location to back up your entire local machine to. So it's not meant to replace, like on a Mac, the Time Machine or whatever it is on a Windows. The server itself, oh God, now we got too many things on the screen, is accessed using virtual machines running Ubuntu. So you get the advantage of both GUI-based and command line. So we're trying to meet the computational needs of people who are very new to running sort of high performance compute and people who are quite happy with a terminal and running everything command line. You are able to access your virtual machine from any active internet connection in the world. So if you had taken advantage of Barbados's invitation to remote work from there during the pandemic, you would have been able to access the server. Generally, the virtual machines will remain running, even if you're not actively engaged or actively logged in. There is a time limit for how long that they will remain running. This is mainly because users are not good at logging out and shutting down their virtual machines on their own. So Robarts IT has taken to doing that on your behalf. One of the other big points for the CBS server is there's no scheduler or queue manager. So when you are logged into your virtual machine, you hit go on your process, it will start immediately. And the process runs entirely within your virtual machine, so you're not fighting for resources from someone else who may also be running a large process. Right. So there's two main account types. There's a basic user, which is free. That comes with 4 cores and 8 GB of RAM. And then there's a power user account, which is fee-based, and that comes with 12 cores and 32 GB of RAM. And coming soon will be a power user plus GPU. So we have the GPU, it's currently being put through its paces and tested. So we're hoping by end of semester, early next year to be able to roll that out to users. This is probably more for if there's any PIs on Zoom rather than the students, but user accounts need to be associated with an active PI account. So if you apply for an account, and your PI doesn't have one, you will get an email from me CCing your PI being like, hey, the PI needs to get signed up first. You do need some active Western or Western affiliate email account. So that's part of the server security. We are trying to work with Western ITS and Robarts IT to be able to allow outside collaborators, but we're hitting brick walls with some of that. And just so you get a sense of the fee schedule, right now there's a 67% cost reduction because of external funding supporting the server. So storage starts at 50 terabytes a year. Once the cost reduction ends, it will go up to the full price of 150 terabytes a year, or $150 per terabyte per year. Power user accounts are $1,000 a year for the first one, and then $500 a year for each subsequent. And once the cost reduction has finished, those prices will go up to $3,000 a year for the first and $1,500 a year for each subsequent. And billing for the PIs who may be in the audience is done on a fixed quarterly schedule through the Mustang market. So how do you get started? It's pretty easy. There are Google Forms. So you fill out the correct one for you. Either you're a PI or you're not a PI. Those are the two forms. Once you've sent the request in, it takes usually about 1 business day turnaround. It may take longer if I or Robarts IT are busy. So just be a little bit patient, but if you haven't heard anything in about 2 or 3 days, send a reminder email and we'll make sure that something didn't get lost in the shuffle. Once you've sent in your account request, you can go ahead and download the VMware Horizon client. So there is a link from Robarts' site to be able to get that. And then it's basically following the instructions on the wiki page that I've set up in terms of getting going with your account. And that's some of the stuff we'll cover when I finish with the slides. Generally speaking, if you need support, you have software requests or general questions. These are your 3 main options. The first one is the support team email address. If you run into an error or something or have a question, please email the support team email address. Please do not email Robarts help desk directly. One of the reasons for emailing us first is then we can start tracking. If you are user number 6 with this error, we may already have a ticket open with Robarts help desk. It also helps us track if there's repeated problems. So if you go to Robarts IT directly, then we don't necessarily know what issues may be arising with the server. We have the new discourse for the computational brain issues. So there may already be a question and a little article or tutorial that answers your question for you. And then this is the link to the wiki page for getting going. And just because I've run a lot of these sorts of tutorials during lockdown, here are some of the frequently asked questions that have come up over the past year or so. First one is, can you SSH directly into the server and use it and bypass the virtual machine? Unfortunately, no, the server is designed to be accessed through the virtual machine interface. So, and Robarts IT is not going to give you special access to be able to bypass the virtual machine. Where can or should I store my data and results? This is very important. All research data and like the associated results files, anything that's sort of large needs to be shared or needs to be stored in your PI's data share. Your home directory should only be used to save small text files, scripts, clone Git repositories. Generally, home directories need to stay under 10 gigabytes. You will get emails from me if we do an audit and your home directory is significantly larger than 10 gigabytes. This is also important because this is a virtual machine setup. If you store data anywhere other than your PI's data share, or you store script files and stuff outside of your home directory, when your virtual machine is shut down, data that's stored anywhere else will be gone. It will not be saved. It will not be backed up. It will no longer be there when you log back in. So make sure that files that are important that you need are either in your PI data share or your home directory. My process doesn't fit within the limits of the basic or heavy user account. Can I get more resources? This is a pretty common one. If your account is a basic account, the answer is going to be you need to upgrade to a heavy account. You can't get more, you can't bypass the fee structure and ask us to put more resources into your basic account. If you have a heavy user account and you are exceeding particularly the RAM resources of that, send support an email and we can work on getting you, increasing that size for you. So we have yet to have someone take us up on that offer, but it is available that if you are in a fee-based account and you need more resources, we can work with you. If there aren't currently many active virtual machines, can I get access to the unused server resources? No, that's not how the server is designed. You get what's in your virtual machine. So there's no way that you can write a script to kind of bypass and suck up the resources of multiple virtual machines. Help, I've locked myself out of my account. Be patient, your account will self-unlock. Generally speaking, I think PI accounts unlock within 15 minutes. Normal user accounts, it may be up to 24 hours. But just wait a few hours and try logging in again. It will unlock itself. Need to make a change to my account. Most likely for non-PI users, this will be your contract expiration date. Because whatever date you put on that form, your account will be shut off on that date. There are forms for you to basically send us in, fill in the Google form, tell us what your new account expiration date, and then your account will be unlocked and everything will be back to how you left it. So accounts are never deleted, they're just deactivated. So if you were to do your master's here, do your PhD someplace else and come back and do your postdoc, we can reactivate your old account from your master's. Can I get additional software installed? Most likely, yes, we've been pretty generous with this. Please make the request to the CBS support email address. Generally, the criterion is if we feel that the software is something that is going to be beneficial generally, so more than just you or a few people in your lab will use it, we will happily install it centrally. Otherwise, Hightow is happy to help you get it installed for your user because you may run into permissions things or need certain libraries and stuff updated. So either way, we are happy to help you get it installed. So are there any sort of general questions on the server before I sort of switch over to the live demo? Yes.
If I run a certain job and exceeded the RAM, I didn't know beforehand it will exceed the RAM.
Yeah.
What will happen? The server will cut off or it will be this one and will be super slow.
Okay, just for the people on Zoom, the question is what happens when your job exceeds the RAM limits? Basically, the job dies. So it will be, if you're on the basic user account, I've discovered particularly with MATLAB will just self-quit, no error messages, nothing, it's gone. So the process will be running, and then poof, everything's been quit and closed. If you're on the heavy machine, I think because there are more resources, you will tend to run into out of memory errors and things like that. But yes, the way the virtual machines work, this isn't like Compute Canada, where if you exceed the resources that you told the scheduler that you were going to need, it will just sort of pad what you need. This one, if you hit the ceiling, the job is going to get killed. Yes.
About something like Python, how often do you update, or how often do you update the package inside the library?
Okay, so the question for Zoom is how often we update, packages and libraries and stuff within Python. I honestly don't know.
I mean, I can help answer that. Sorry, I was trying to speak.
Yeah.
Are you using Jabra or your laptop?
Just for my laptop.
Okay. Can people hear me right now? We don't know. Okay, well, basically we don't manage any Python packages, so it's up to you to build a virtual environment in your home directory or in your user somewhere in your PI space, and then install packages there. So we'll just basically have the base Python versions. So I think there is like 3.8, 3.7, 3.9,
something like that
right now, and then when we upgrade very soon to Ubuntu, I think we're just going to have 2.8 right now. But basically, yeah, it's up to you to install.
In terms of like softwares like MATLAB and then the base Python packages and sort of research neuroimaging ones like FreeSurfer and FSL, we will, as new versions of those come out, we will make sure that we try and keep as up to date as we can. So right now, when I log onto the server, you'll see that we have multiple versions of MATLAB. I think we have a couple versions of FreeSurfer and stuff. So you'll never be in a position that you started your analysis with like MATLAB 2019A. We decide to update to MATLAB 2022B, you won't lose your access to. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Yes. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to see if Zoom and the server decide to play nicely and get logged in. So this is the VMware Horizon client. Can show you. Briefly, I think we're just going to share. So this is the wiki page on the server. So you can see there's lots of information, links to where your PI can get an account, links to where you can request an account, fee schedule stuff. If you need to make changes, here's the links to those forms. I sort of feel like there's always a form for what you need to do. If you need to log in, or if you are a first-time user and need to download the VMware client, this is the website. And you can either install the VMware Horizon client, which seems to be a little bit more stable. But if you are on a computer, like your personal computer or something, and you just want to check and you don't want to download the client, you can also access through the internet as well. So once you've downloaded the client, there are instructions for which server connection address that you should be using. And then your user ID will be, if you are not affiliated with Robarts, your user ID will be the same as your UWO user ID. If you are affiliated with Robarts and have Robarts credentials, your logins will be the identical Robarts credentials that you were previously assigned. So that's the slight difference. And server admin, so Chris over in Robarts IT is very strict about this. So if you are Robarts and have expired accounts or need password resets and things, then you do need to go through the proper Robarts channels for that. At this point, I'm going to put in my password. Normally, when you first log in, if you only have a basic free account, you're only going to see the CBS Basic. That will be your only option for logging in. If you have requested the power user account, then you will see both the CBS Basic and the CBS Heavy options. CBS Heavy will be the one that you want to use if you want to make use of the extra resources. If you log into CBS Basic, even if you have a power user account, you're going to be limited to the basic. So just make sure that you're logging into the correct machine, and almost no one should see the CBS test unit. So that's a admin only. So the server itself is set up to auto log you in. Occasionally this doesn't work with updates and various things, so you may be prompted to enter your username and password at the Ubuntu screen. It is the exact same user and password you just used to log into the VMware client. So trying to think, okay. I'm not sure I want to change my password, but we will go ahead and do. Probably one of the first things when you do want log in is you'll want to change your password, because what you get from Robarts IT is sort of one of those really random character strings. So then there's basically a K in it, and it's going to ask you for your old. Oh, I think I just left it at my old one, but it will ask you to type in a new password. And then now it's asking me to enter a new password. There we go. So password changes need to be done through the KNet, not through any of like the Ubuntu sort of GUI based systems. Sort of a key thing we talked about in the slides of having your virtual machine remain running, even if you don't have the actual client open, versus I'm finished for the day, I don't need my virtual machine to run. So if you want to leave your virtual machine running, basically you would just go up and quit the VMware Horizon client like you would quit any other application. And then your virtual machine will remain running for the time limit that Robarts has set. If you are completely finished, please be kind, and you go up to the power button, select your account, and actually log off. And logging off will kill the virtual machine. This is also a good thing to know. If things get frozen and stuff in your current virtual machine, you should always be able to log off. Wait a couple minutes, restart a new one, and then you should be good to go. So we talked about PI data shares. So if we go, there is a drive called Serve. And you can see that we have a lot of lists of, PIs who have data shares. So every user will be able to, potentially see that these data shares exist. But if I try and go into one that I don't have permission to enter, it will always appear empty. So don't get weirded out that suddenly security has opened up. So I only have access to one PI data share, which is my supervisor. So if I go into that one, then I actually see the files, but everyone else will look empty. In order to access your PI data share, it's not automatically set up for you to do so when you log in. So you have, this happens to be mine. There is a mount command. So you can either run this mount command every time you log into the virtual machine. Obviously replace Diedrichson with whatever your PI's last name is. And you would hit enter, and then it's going to ask you. And now I don't remember what my password is. Let's see. There we go. It's going to ask you for your server password. Obviously, this is slightly annoying to have to do this every single time you start up a virtual machine. So Ali has set up a script that if you do setup auto mount version 2 and hit enter, this will walk you through steps to basically set up a password or username and password so that every time you start up a virtual machine, your PI's data share will be automatically mounted. And so every time you log in, you'll be ready to go. There's some slightly dated screen grabs on the wiki, but basically Ali wrote very clear instructions. So it's basically read the instructions and follow what this particular script is asking you to do. So I'm gonna. And basically what this script does is it will put a line in your .profile file in your user account that it will just run every time you log in. If you happen to be a Compute Canada user, then Ali has also written a really nice script that will set up an SSHFS alias onto Graham or whatever Compute Canada system that you currently have an account on. So again, you would run this setup SSHFS alias, follow the instructions. You do need an active Compute Canada account in order to make it through the instructions. But once you've done that, then it's a simple command to get your Compute Canada account mounted as an external drive. I'm going to go ahead and unmount Graham. As we talked about in the slides, basically storage, either you're storing in your home directory. So you can see that I've got mainly text files. I have a couple Python virtual environments in there, and then just some small sort of Excel type MATLAB results. But there is very little in my home directory that isn't a text file, and that's how it should be for your users. Or you go to your PI's data share. Go look at mine. And this is where if I'm testing out research data or things like that, then it all goes in my PI's data share. Something to note, because I guess would be another frequently asked question I forgot. Within your PI's data share, anyone who is in your lab can basically read and write the files. So if you are in a situation where you have security issues with data, then you need to work with your PI to get a project set up so that you can limit access to only those people who need to have access to it. And the last big one is software. So if you are a Compute Canada user, this will seem very familiar. If you're not, then this is a slightly weird way, but it makes perfect logic sense for how we set up software. So we use a module system. This allows us to have multiple versions of the same software installed centrally on the system and not have things conflict. So If you run a command module list, that will give you a list of every piece of software that is ready for you to use. So these are the default softwares that are automatically loaded for every user. So you can see it's pretty much one copy of one version of all of the softwares that we have available. If you're interested in everything that we have, then module avail will give you the list of everything that we have installed on the system. So you can see that there's, 3 versions of MATLAB, a couple versions of FSL, and FreeSurfer and the Connectome Workbench. And if you want to change, then it would be basically you can do a module load MATLAB. And let's say I want to go up to 2020B. And now when I do the software I have installed, you can see that I now have MATLAB 2020B available. If this is something that you are always going to want MATLAB 2020B or some specific version of a software that's centrally located, we can help you put a line in one of your profiles or bash files so that that module that software is always loaded when you log in. So you are able to somewhat customize the default list for your account. You asked about Python. We do have Conda installed. However, Conda is quirky, so it doesn't always work well for Conda environments. So you are better off, we use virtual environment is the preferred. So there's instructions here of basically how you set up a virtual environment and then pip install everything that you need. You can do an installation of mini Conda, but I don't know if anyone's anyone, Ali, on your end using it or?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it would work. I think we should make sure to update. I think the instructions for virtual environments might be out of date. I think
there's a new one. I put the new one on the discourse, so I'll.
Okay. Yeah.
I now have 2 sort of documentations that I'm trying to keep updated, but
yeah, so we can just link to that.
Yeah. Yeah. So on the discourse, there is a more complete instructions on setting up a Python virtual environment.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes.
When I use Witt to install a Python package, I look here, there are only 2 ones, Witt and Witt2 and Witt. So which Python version do these packages will be installed for?
You get to
If you go to the Discord, so here it'll depend what Python you use when you create your virtual environment. So you have to use instead of using Python 3 specifically or Python, you want to be using Python 3.9 or Python 3.8, 3.7, and then once that creates the virtual environment, then you can just use pip.
Yeah. So once you're inside the virtual environment will match whatever Python version that you set it up under.
But if I did this without a virtual environment, in the home page.
Yeah, I mean, then it's a little weird because this old version of Ubuntu we're using, it needs to have Python as the Python 2. So
Yeah.
So we can't change that for the yeah, it would be, I think.
So the option is always to stick to the virtual environment.
I would say that's most recommended because then you get to control and you don't run into the issue of you've installed everything and got everything set up. And then Hightow has to go and update some libraries because we need a new version of some other research software that we support. and now suddenly we've broken your, open, your non, or all of your Python code that isn't in an environment. So the environment gives you the ultimate control, and also make sure that we don't accidentally screw things up for you, because we need to make updates and things. So
yeah, one thing that's going to change when we do upgrade to Ubuntu 20.04 is now Python 3 is going to be, there's just going to be a default Python 3, so that you wouldn't have to specify the actual specific Python version. So things will be a little easier for Ubuntu 20.04, but yeah, we'll update the instructions.
And sort of one of the last major pieces of this is it is possible to mount your PI's data share as an external drive on your machine. So this makes it easier for data transfer. So you don't have to necessarily put everything on Dropbox or something and then use the server's internet connection to do the download. The catch right now is that you have to be on a Western network. So Ethernet is preferred just because it's gigabit Ethernet and the transfers will go a lot faster. But the UWO secure version 2 will also work. And I think right now, Western ITS has screwed up stuff for us, so you can only access it via the UWO secure version 2. So we have a ticket open with Western ITS, but who knows when that will be serviced. And we are also looking to get campus-wide roams access for the server, so that if you have any sort of remote access through Western technology, that you will be able to leverage that to get into the server as well. But generally on a Mac, you would go to the connect to server, and there's either a Samba or a SIPS. I generally find that the Samba works better. And the first time that you connect, it is going to ask you for username and password. So this time, because I changed my password. Your username, somewhat annoyingly, will be your UWO ID at robarts.ca for running this step. And then you click connect, and then you'll be able to see all the folders in your PI's data share. And then at this point, it's just drag and drop as you would any other external drive. There are instructions for Mac, there are instructions for Windows. The key thing from Windows is this is from the Windows Explorer program, not Internet Explorer. So you want to find the sort of file share Windows Explorer, which I've discovered on later versions of Windows, they keep hiding further and further away. And then Linux, these are the instructions that I've gotten from Robarts IT, but we haven't had anyone really beta test them. So I don't know if they fully work or if they need to be updated. Right now, unless you're associated with Robarts, often being able to do this off campus may or may not work. So we don't guarantee that. It kind of depends on which remote access bin Western IT has assigned you to. So that was sort of the things I wanted to cover, but are there questions or do people want to see something specific done on the server? Yes.
If I created a virtual environment or I want other people in the application, how should I do it?
Okay, so the question for people on Zoom is if someone's created a virtual environment or has something in a container that you want other people in your lab to be able to use, best place to store it is your PI's data share. Everyone in your lab will be able to see it, access it, edit it, so they could, make mischief, but yeah, that's in same sort of thing if you're wanting to clone like a Git repository that everyone in your lab is going to be able to use, it's best to clone it into your PI's data share. Otherwise, every single person in the lab is going to have to clone it. And then if you make changes or changes are made, then not everyone may update the repository. So let's see. Okay, forms. Sorry, there was a question in the Zoom chat about the forms you need. I guess if there's no other questions, thank everyone for coming, and I will end the recording now.